Hi everybody, welcome to We Are the City's webinar series, We Are Virtual. I hope you're making the most of this in this difficult time. I'm honoured to be part of the We Are Virtual programme, and today we are covering the subject of toxic environments. So welcome to this webinar with me, Nicola Forbes-Taylor. I am part of NFT Consulting, and I'll be telling you a bit about myself and my background in a moment. So today we are talking about toxic environments. Why am I talking about that? So first of all, we're going to be talking about how to spot them, avoid them, survive them, and also escape them. But why am I talking about it? So I have personal experience that gives me insight into this focus area. I have personal experience of seeing misalignment of roles, seeing a lack of autonomy in roles, and seeing sexism at times in roles, and that's my personal experience. Everyone's experience is different. That can be part of toxicity. We're going to talk a bit about that and discover a bit about what that might be. I've also helped numerous employees, peers and friends through toxic leadership, through harassment and bullying, through discrimination, which also can play a part in a toxic environment. Not exclusively though, there'll be a lot of things. So let's actually look at codifying what is toxicity. So welcome to those who are still just joining. We are talking about toxic environments, and let's get into codifying what it is. This is my background. I've also worked with companies who want to avoid toxicity. If you are working in an environment and you think, gosh, as we explore this, this is something I really want to help our company avoid, then reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to share with you, and I'll talk a bit more about that at the end. But I can help businesses through leadership, and I work with a number of clients on that to help them avoid going down this path through being really conscious in their leadership. So let's get into it. What is toxicity? So first of all, when we go through these three things, I'm going to explore what they mean in practice. So what it is, when we think about codifying toxicity in a number of different contexts, is something that is poisonous. It's something that is harmful. So if that is the environment that we're in, that is poisonous to us. It is harmful to us. And it may be that it's harmful to some people, but not harmful to others because of the way that those organisations may be set up and how it works for you. So what does it mean to have a toxic workplace? So a toxic workplace is an ineffective as well as damaging environment to its employees. It's ineffective because it doesn't allow employees to thrive. It doesn't allow us to be ourselves and to really bring everything we can to our work, because we're not being fully creative and innovative. Because if we're in a toxic environment, that will affect how we behave and how we feel. So how does that play out in practice? Let's have a think. So there's a number of different elements, and I'd like to ask you to think about, what do you recognise in these elements of working environments that you're either in at the moment or have been in the past? So have a think as we're talking through these. What does this mean for you? What do you recognise? So there's 5 areas that I'd like to consider, and thinking about toxic environments first, let's think about, what does that mean for you, and what has it meant in your past that you can recognise? So first of all, in terms of relationships, what does that mean for you in terms of how they are characterised? Are they characterised by inner circle dynamics? Are they individuals who bully others to get away with it as long as they're in the inner circle? Sorry, I'm just going to turn those off. Are those relationships characterised by that kind of inner circle? Are expectations a continual moving feast? Are they about false promises, actually? Or is there a sense of no follow through? Is it that there are things that are said, but really they don't mean anything? And even when timeframes are set, it's not actually really followed through. So you know those timeframes aren't real. They're just a false sense of pressure. In terms of promotions, if you've worked in a toxic environment or in a toxic environment, what you might recognize here is that processes seem to be hidden. Processes are about a favoured inner circle, and promotions are given to this inner circle or people preferred by that inner circle despite ability or performance. Promotions are really important that we understand how those work, and if that isn't clear, it can feel really toxic because it feels very unfair. Respect is really important for us to feel there is that trust and respect in environments. And in toxic environments, this is often a pretense. It feels a pretense because there's a disconnect between what is talked about in terms of respect and the reality of towing the line. And that towing the line usually is this homogenous approach to thinking and behaving that we all have to be the same and actually go along with it, be part of the team, be a team player. When actually what that means is don't ask questions, don't challenge, don't bring different ideas that challenge our way of thinking. And those questions or ideas can be squashed or ignored. The other thing that we need to think about when we're thinking about toxicity is leadership. We think about often with this that there is a disconnect, and you might recognize that if you've been in a toxic environment where leadership is really disconnected, and what is talked about in terms of an open and democratic approach isn't the reality. The reality is that there's a single person or a single small group, maybe that inner circle, holding power. And that's how decisions are made, that's how the organisation is led. And even though it's communicated as something else, the reality is that's the way it's approached. So in those 5 areas, toxic environments can show up in a very clear way. And it's often characterised by this disconnect of a lack of reality to what is communicated, and also this having to be part of an inner circle. There's some key themes there. Then when we think about healthy environments at the other end of the scale, and at this one I want to acknowledge that there will be a number of different environments that are on a whole scale with this. So there's a whole spectrum of experiences and situations. But for you, if you're in a healthy environment at a really, really healthy end of the spectrum, what you could be seeing with relationships is that they are open, they are connected, and people are really connecting with people based on respect. Disrespectful behaviour at the same time is actually stopped and actively addressed. So it's not that there is healthy relationships and then when anything happens it's ignored. It's really a proactive environment around nurturing and creating respect. Expectations are clear and promises and timelines are used in practice. And the most important thing with timelines in a healthy environment is that they are real and they're followed through, so that people have that security of knowing what to expect. And that's what we need in a really healthy environment, that our minds know what to think, know what to expect, and can work with that so that you can use your energy in a really focused way in a safe framework. Promotions, as we talked about, are really transparent, so that processes, if it's going to be decided by a certain group, that's communicated. If it's going to be an assessment, that's communicated. And the ability and performance is communicated as to what is needed, and then when people are appointed, why they were appointed. And you'll notice that there isn't a theme of, oh, it's always the people that are liked by X and Y or this inner circle, but that people are appointed because they are either high potential for that role or they are the best able to perform that role. Respect is really about accepting that there is a difference of opinion, and it's actually healthy to have a difference of opinion. and that when we have diversity of opinion, we can have change and innovation. It's really important for us to respect that different ways of thinking can actually bring real positives through the way that we approach things. So just to be clear at this point, I just want to highlight, I'm going to address question and answers at the end. I know there's some questions coming in, which is fantastic, and I'll speak to those a bit more at the end. In terms of leadership, when you're in a healthy environment, boundaries are really clear. What is communicated is what you feel and what you experience, that walking the talk environment. Boundaries are real and they're reinforced. And if there are times when decisions need to be made and things can't be communicated, that will be made clear too. Voices are listened to in a healthy environment, ideas are acted on and or incorporated, and equally, if they can't be incorporated, that is communicated too. At this point in time, for example, we can't actually address X and Y, which was a great suggestion that we had, and this is why. So boundaries around what we can invest in, boundaries around what is the right thing because of the business stage of growth, all those things are really open, and leadership is open about the drivers for decisions and the way that they work. They're also really open to feedback, whether that's about themselves or about the business. And it's not received in a defensive way. So that gives you a sense of the healthy environment. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how we codify and how we identify what toxicity is and what it isn't. So if we now know what it is and what it isn't, how do we avoid what it is? So let's have a think here. First of all, I'd like to share with you 4 things that can help you spot a toxic environment. Before you join a company, there's a number of things that are widely available that you can research to help you understand what a toxic environment looks like. These 4 things I would suggest are the following. So first of all, have a look at employee churn. You may not be able to look at statistics, but what you can do is look on job boards, look on Glassdoor, and see how often roles are being recruited for. Is that conjoined? Is that joined up with, if you look on Crunchbase, for example, if you're in a tech environment, and lots of other industries, you can look at industry resources to say, is the organisation growing at the same rate as these jobs are being advertised? Or does it suggest that we've got a revolving door here? Equally, if it is quite a niche, unique role and they're frequently advertising it, it would suggest that, for example, if in HR, a people director role, you would normally have one people director role in a business, unless it's a very large organisation. And if that is being advertised, you can spot that might be a hint that this could be a toxic environment and people are leaving because of that. A Glassdoor rating and or comment that will give you so much information. So just one comment on its own, one rating on its own, of course, as with any analytics, that doesn't tell you something categoric. However, if you can look at trends and you can look through the comments and you see a thread around the leadership, or a thread around the culture, a thread around unfairness, the things that we've just talked about, that gives you an insight and that can help you spot a toxic environment. Another way to look at this is market reputation and word of mouth. We all know people who know people. Ask around, ask recruiters that you know, ask the recruiter that isn't recruiting for that role, for example, and ask them about what they know about that organisation, about the leadership, the culture, about the areas we've talked about. That will give you insight. And also, if when you're meeting with the organisation, they cannot give you concrete examples of their values in practice, that might give you an insight. So for example, if you say, can you tell me about what respect really means here, you know, in the last week or so, what's something that's really demonstrated that respect is a frequent value and or behaviour that's used in organisations. If they're struggling to give you an example of that, that might mean it's not really either embedded or not very real. So it's giving you some information, not necessarily definitely toxic, but it's giving you some information. If the answers also seem too sanitized, that could be a very real indicator that that recruiter and or that interviewer and or recruitment consultant is saying what they think you need to hear or want to hear, and it doesn't ring true. If your gut is saying to you, this doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. Listen to your gut. So that can help you with how to spot. How to uncover is really working about understanding when your gut is telling you something, how can you uncover it further? So I'll be sharing, there'll be a recording of this that will be shared so you can get more details. So you don't need to write down all these questions now, but there's 8 probing questions there that might help you. That when your gut is starting to say, there's something not right here, really trust your intuition. So if this is in the early conversation over the phone, really note people's language, really note their tone. If it is when you are actually meeting face to face, notice body language. Notice where there might be a disconnect. The word disconnect is coming up a lot here because toxicity is often about that disconnect. And it's not congruent, it's not authentic, it's not holistic, it's not real. And that's why we struggle with it, because our minds and our bodies are thinking there's something not connected here, and that doesn't feel good. So some of the key questions here. So if you want to understand what's really happening and really uncover what real values are happening, you can say, what works well here? And then accountably, what doesn't work so well here at the moment? If you're asking to the interviewer, it could be, well, what keeps you here? Ask the questions that they're not expecting. It will uncover for you information that you wouldn't otherwise have got, and it'll help you either counter this information that might be flagging to you that you're not sure if there's something toxic here, or it could give you more information that helps you understand, for example, if you're going in to help them improve this situation, what you need to address and where you need to start. When someone's given you an office tour, a nice question I like to ask is, what's different when you join here than when you're just getting the tour? What's the thing that people don't usually know? Why is the person leaving who they're recruiting, the incumbent? Why are they leaving? And then ask that same question to multiple people and see what answer you get. It's a really nice, illuminating question. And what have other candidates fed back about their experience? That's a really telling one. Your candidate experience before joining an organisation can be really telling as to how the company will treat you later. If they don't come back to you when they say they will, if they don't maintain the process that they said they would, i.e. you're going to meet these 2 people, then we'll make a decision, and then it becomes another person and another person and another person. And or the lack of feedback, lack of transparency. All these things are telling you information. Listen and note what is happening. A question that you can ask at a final stage, once you've asked lots of positive questions, of course, please do hear that. You know, how could I succeed here? What would be my measures of success? If I was coming to the end of my probation, most organisations have some sort of probation period. What would be the reasons that I have absolutely knocked this out of the park? And then the counter to that, what would make this not work out? So these are some probing questions that hopefully help you uncover toxicity. So they will help you to spot, uncover, and avoid toxicity. If you are already in a toxic environment, what do you do? Well, here are 6 ideas that are your survival toolkit. First of all, I would say to you, pinpoint a time frame. If you are in a toxic environment and you're feeling the pressure and the strain of that, and it feels that you can't cope with what is happening, give yourself a time frame to survive to. When you do that, you give yourself a number of things. You give yourself headspace to just focus on the time up to that point. You can then review. You could then take action, and that action could be a number of different things. We'll come to that. but you give yourself a moment in time to make it to. That time could be tomorrow. It could be the end of the day. It could be lunchtime. But give yourself a time frame and then work to that time frame. Befriend a recruiter. Recruiters are very well connected. They know the market. They know the employers to avoid, I have to say, more than anyone else. Internal recruiters or agency recruiters, befriend them. Befriend one recruiter who you really trust, who's very well connected in your industry, who would have the type of roles that you have. Spend time with them. Buy them a drink, coffee, drink, alcohol, whatever works for you. But really let them get to know you and get to know them. By doing that, what you can do is share with them the reality of your current experience. And you can also share with them what your strengths are and have been before this experience. They then get balance. What they then also get an insight into is what your strengths are and what helps you thrive, and what is not working for you in this environment. Then they can find you the role that really helps you thrive. An organisation and culture and environment that gives you everything you need to be really happy and successful. Thirdly, get support. I would recommend thinking about a coach. I'm an executive coach. I work with people in these environments. How you think and your mindset defines your behaviour and defines so much of interactions. A coach is a hugely powerful tool to help you in surviving and also in thriving. But when you're in this mode of needing to survive, a coach can be a hugely powerful way to help yourself. A mentor can also help you. A mentor can help you understand from their experience how they've come across or how they've experienced environments like this. And also reach out to your friends. It's really important that you have people around you who support, admire, and celebrate who you are for being you. If you're in a toxic environment, you need that feedback. You need that ability to relax, because you might find yourself feeling very tense a lot of the time and not being able to just relax and be you. So give yourself an environment where you can be that. Write a journal. A journal is a really powerful tool to help you from a cathartic point of view, and also it might be useful for you from an evidence point of view, depending on what you want to do for future. So from a cathartic point of view, psychological study has proven that when we write down really powerful emotions, we process them and we help let go of them. And a lot of the toxins and chemicals that go around our body change when we start writing it down. So write down how you feel. Write down things that have happened and also the feelings that came as a result of that and how you responded to that. It will help you process it. It also stops it just going round and round in your head, because it helps you get it out and onto paper. It's almost like a physical divulging of your thoughts. And as I said, it can also help in terms of evidence. So if you do it for no other reason, do it for yourself. However, it can also be helpful if you were to raise a formal issue, and wherever you would like to take that, you could use that as evidence, because it gives you documented dates and times and impact and how it's impacted your well-being. And while you're in this environment, look after your well-being. It's really important to know how you can make the most of a number of different areas and don't neglect them. So your physical well-being. Think about what you eat, what you drink, and how much you sleep. Give yourself what you need, what your body wants, and not just chocolate and caffeine, although, a little bit of that is okay. But make sure that you have what you need. From a spiritual point of view, you might want to engage with more mindfulness. It might be prayer for you, it might be meditation for you, it might be local support groups. Whatever that is in terms of spiritual well-being, engage with that and don't forget that. Your emotional well-being, as I've mentioned, a coach, a mentor, maybe some qualified help, a counsellor. and or your friends to give you that emotional support. And also your financial well-being. Think about a plan. Do you have a cushion if you needed to leave this role? How do you create a cushion? What could be your options? In speaking to your recruiter, how quickly is the market moving? Might be difficult at the moment. So thinking about how you survive could be a really important thing. But make sure you're informed about what the current market is, and be informed about what your costs are and your overheads are. If you haven't already got a spreadsheet with that in, I really recommend starting that. Make sure you know what all your outgoings are and your incomings are, and plan with that in mind. Look after your financial well-being. And then consider, finally, my last point in the survival toolkit is consider what you want to do. And the reason I've included this is everybody will have an opinion, whether that is your mentor, whether that is a friend, whether that is a recruiter, that could be your current employer, could be colleagues. So many people will have an opinion of what you should do. Oh, I'll tell you what you should do. You should do this. They can't do this to you. So many people will have an opinion. The most important thing to do, though, is what is right for you. Because what another person might advise in terms of making something formal, going to tribunal, and you have a right to do things like that. If you are being harassed or being bullied, get advice, speak to an employment lawyer. I have contacts in my network. Feel free to come and ask me about that. However, be really clear about what that's going to cost you. We've just talked about well-being. What's really important in terms of your survival is that you're conscious about what you need to take in, and what you're going to be giving out. And considering what you want to do is also another one of those weighing up opportunities. You weigh up, what are you willing to give? What are you willing to invest in terms of time, in terms of emotion, in terms of financial cost, to take something more formal? And that's not saying don't do that. It's saying do that if that is right for you and you do it really consciously. Emotionally, those can be difficult journeys. And that's when you think about what your next step is, it's really important to do the right thing for you and to plan with that in mind. So with that in mind, I want to help you through sort of how do you exit a toxic environment? How do you escape? Well, first of all, prepare. Don't just act. A lot of the time we can get into a phase of, I'm just going to resign. Do not go into that mode. Take a step back, breathe, and think about, right, what do I want to exit this business with? If you want to exit it with power, there is a really powerful tool I'm going to talk about in a moment, which can help you do that. But also you need to use grace. And in order to have grace, I would say it's not an easy thing to do, but it helps you leave with a very different mindset. And first of all, you need to think about, rather than what is going wrong, think about what has gone right. So for yourself, what are all the things that you have achieved there? What are all the things that you have done or been part of or instigated or influenced that have had a positive impact? Brainstorm all of that, write it all down. Do not censor yourself. If you need multiple pieces of paper, huge pieces of paper, keep going, keep going, keep going, and quantify them. Quantify those achievements by how many people were involved. If you ran learning sessions or you ran all company meetings that impacted the culture, how many people were in those meetings at the start and over a year's period or 6-month period or however long you've been there, 3 years period? How many has that become? And what was the feedback you got? It's really important when we always do feedback. So you can say, 90% success rate, 90% feedback, positive feedback. And then the impact on the culture. So enabling a business to grow from, for example, being an employee base of 90 people to 360 people, being able to quantify those percentage increases and all those things that you've achieved. Changes to client offerings, changes to product launches, timeframes of improvements, bug fixing, all those things that you helped influence, were instrumental in, you personally achieved, write them down, quantify them, and weave them into your reason for leaving. Once you have that down, research companies with great reputations. What we can do is get into a cycle of going continually, get my teeth in, continually through this cycle of wanting to escape, but then not listening when we're actually given lots of information and red flags are being raised. And then we go into another environment and we don't realise perhaps our part in it, and that can help actually continue this cycle, which is why a coach can really, really help with that, because they're not just a friend, they are somebody who can actually help you in a safe space reflect and make conscious choices. So research companies who could be great for you, and build a financial cushion, as we've mentioned, and a financial plan, and be very realistic about that. Chat that through with somebody you trust, could be mentor, could be friends, could be family, could be partner. Make sure that's a really clear plan. You're not making assumptions there that aren't realistic. So once you've done that preparation, you can then look to your action points. So this is this tool that I want to share with you, which is about resigning with grace and power. If you want a mindset with an ability to let go of the negatives that could impact you going forward, try this technique. It 100% works. It works for you. It's worked for me as an individual. It also helps the business. So this is the way it works. The thing you do is you say, thank you for these, and I haven't forgotten to put some in here. You insert your own 3 things, okay? And 3, as we all know, is our key thing that we can all remember 3 things. So 1, 2, and 3. This, and this that I have achieved and or been part of achieving and delivering here, that I am really proud to have delivered for you. The wording there is really important. You are saying, I have been proud to do this for you. That's the grace part. The power part is that by doing that, what you do is you take yourself and you invite them to a really adult place. And that adult place is, I have made the decision to leave. My mindset is in a positive place. And I invite you to come to that positive place. And that is going to be the wording and narration that goes out to the organisation. Because once they come to that positive place with you, they're much more likely to accept in a really grown-up adult way that you have resigned, that this is happening. They don't go into this denial, debate, negative place. And particularly if you're in a toxic environment, that could be quite a likely response and a difficult response. This is much more likely to bring people to a place where they say, oh, well, you're not doing this in a very negative way. Oh, and it invites them to do the same. The real power comes with this next bit though. The power comes with the wording that you use with these 3 things are the 3 things they are likely to communicate to everyone. What happens? They then tell the organisation that you achieved these 3 things. Isn't that amazing? We're so sorry to see them leave and we wish them well. Worst case scenario, they choose one of them. But you're giving them these 3 things. If you give it to them in your resignation speech and then in your resignation letter, they have it in writing to replicate. Often a challenging thing for an organisation, you might have been part of these discussions before, is actually how do we communicate that somebody is leaving? How do we narrate this? What you're giving them is the positive narration. It's a very powerful tool. What then happens is that becomes the reason, and that becomes the platform that you can stand on that says, and this is why I'm leaving. And if you keep using that language and they keep using that language, it becomes a really positive, self-fulfilling thing that you can feel positive and know that you've delivered positive things rather than think about the negative things. That sometimes translates, I'd love to say often, but sometimes translates into an actual referral as well. Your reference. they may actually refer to those things that you have actually delivered because you've given them that information. It's like a sound bite that can be referred to. I hope that tool's useful. I look forward to hearing. Let me know how that works for you if you use that. That can then help you in terms of your next step of action, which is going to that healthy next role. Really important, I would say, in terms of one piece of advice here, when you're moving to another role, excuse me, from one toxic environment to another, or to another role, take a break so that it doesn't become baggage that you bring with you. Give yourself a break that allows you to have the time to let go of what's happened, process what's happened, and move to that new role. Give yourself a minimum of a week. If that means that you take that unpaid, believe me, it will be worth it. If you can at all make that happen, make that happen. Take some paid holiday, negotiate that as part of your new start. Give yourself that break. If you take that negative baggage with you, it can take you to a different place in that new role. And you want to start with your head in a great place, don't you? I've then said, next step in terms of action, repeat your positive narration. What will happen? I've been there. I've been coaching people who've been there. What often happens is that negative baggage comes back to us. And it comes back to us in terms of voices, in terms of accusations, that sort of self-talk, negative self-talk. And if you recognize that, then you've probably done some work on that. But if you haven't, all that means is people's voices in your mind saying they're going to find out that X went wrong at X place. Everybody's going to hate you the way they did at X place. Those sorts of very toxic voices, those can come back. So it's important to A, keep repeating your positive narration, which is, I am leaving for a good role. I've achieved these 3 things. I will be successful. Or whatever that narration is for you. Coach can help you, mentor can help you develop that. Friends might be able to help you too. Important part of it, though, that either a coach or a qualified counsellor can really help you work through is getting rid of that toxic narration. That toxic negative self-talk can get really, really embedded. And it may be being triggered by other things that have happened in your life. And if so, get some help. Speak to a coach, speak to a qualified coach, speak to a qualified counsellor, get professional support to process it, because it is a complex thing that can be often tangled with lots of other things that have happened to us and become tangled in our minds. We can take that with us if we don't process it. So if you want to really escape a toxic environment, do not miss that step of letting go. And that letting go may be an ongoing process of letting go of that toxic narration, that toxic baggage that may be still in your mind. And once you want to escape, you've got this action plan. I want to take you through couple of final things in terms of an action plan. So be kind to yourself. If you have gone through a difficult time, yes, reflect on your part to play. As I've said, get some help as well, coaching, counselling, friends, mentor, professional support. Reflect on that part you had to play in it. It's really important, I believe, to learn for ourselves what we could do differently. When that started to happen, could we have nipped it in the bud in a different way? Could we have responded in a different way? But don't beat yourself up with it. This is not a course to feeding this toxic voice. This is about reflective learning that helps you move forward. So be kind to yourself. And then also celebrate. Celebrate your strength. Celebrate your courage. Celebrate your achievement of moving on. Maybe to a new role. Maybe more money, eh? You've discussed all these things. You've survived all these things, and you've now achieved something of moving forward. When you have achieved that, give yourself the space to celebrate, and whatever that celebration means to you. It could be doing something that you've always wanted to do and experience. It could be spending time with those you love. It could be having a bottle of something fizzy. It could be whatever you want it to be. But celebrate, mark the moment, write it in your journal, because you have not just survived, you are giving your chance to thrive. So celebrate that. So you may be thinking that there's an awful lot we've covered here. I'm happy to continue conversations. We'll have a bit of Q&A in a moment, and I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn and continue chatting with guys. However, I wanted to give a couple of resources that you can immediately look into if those things trigger something of interest for you. So a book that I have found hugely influential, it was in my top 3, I was sharing with someone on Zoom just the other day, which is The Inner Game of Work by Timothy Galway. The Inner Game of Work talks about how we process things in our mind. That's the inner game he's talking about. And he talks about what that means at work. So this is based on, for anybody who's come across transactional analysis and how we interact with people and the different games that get played and our conscious choices that we can make about how we play, whether we play. All those things are described and set out in a really, really easy to access way. He writes really easily. It's not a complex book, but really insightful book to think about, right, how could I respond differently to things? What are the games that are being played? How could I interact differently? Really insightful book without becoming blaming, and helping us understand our role and other people's roles in how workplace dynamics play out. Another one is Mind Management, The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. This is a great book, and the concept is such a simple one to get hold of, which is that when we are under threat, we respond, and it's our amygdala in our brain that's driving a response that is about protecting us. We often talk about fight, flight, or freeze. Harriet Minter in a session the other week talked about also friend. Maybe that's also part of our response mechanism, but that's driven very, very quickly, almost instantaneously, by our amygdala. And Professor Steve Peters has almost rebranded that, if you like, and he's called it our chimp. That response is like our chimp, and that chimp is trying to protect us, but often it processes in ways and reacts in ways that aren't always the best and aren't always helpful in the modern world. So it's that paradox of wanting to protect, but often being challenging. So you still need to read the book, by the way. That's just a bit of a synopsis, but it's really, really helpful book around helping us understand how our minds are working, but maybe also spot that in others and help others. So for those of you who like books, they're really useful. For those of you who might also like a TED Talk, these are 2 great TED Talks that are really insightful about this sort of topic around unhealthy environments and being resilient. So first, Glenn D. Wilson, really interesting way that he portrays how we can start to change unhealthy environments, and that could start with how we interact around gossip and around talking about people and how that could work out. That's just an insight that could be something that may or may not play out in the environment you're in. Lucy Hone talks very authentically about being resilient in some of the most challenging times of life, obviously applicable to how we are at the moment. So have a think about resilience. If resilience is something you want to explore some more, Lucy could be of interest to you there. So I hope those resources are of use, and I hope those help you out. So we've covered 3 areas about spotting and avoiding toxicity if you're not in it, and making sure you don't get into it. If you are in it, how to survive it, and then how to escape it. So I hope those tools have been useful. I want to take some questions, so I'm going to go to Q&A. So for We Are the City, the next We Are Virtual session will be with Kay White, and that's going to be tomorrow, so make sure you sign up for that. Lovely to meet you all the best. I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn.